Remember that time where I talked about how Sony is going to skip E3 entirely and I speculated that it's because they don't have any good games to announce? Well, it looks like Sony finally comes out and gives its reason in why they want to leave E3 entirely. And the reason is, well, it's a pretty big burn and also really not that surprising. Here's an interview conducted by CNET regarding Sony's departure from E3 2019. The reason why Sony decided to drop out of E3 is because E3 served two constituencies: retailers and journalists. Retailers would come in to talk about selling their games and journalists would come in to give coverage of the event. At that time, there was no internet, so that's why they needed E3. But since Sony has its own event called Destination PlayStation where they bring all the retailers and third-party partners to come hear the story of the year, they don't really need E3 to do that. June is just way too late for them to have a Christmas holiday discussion with the retailers. Retailers have really dropped off and the internet is 24/7 news. So the journalists are really losing its impact. Oof, Sony. Oof. The trade show of E3 becomes a trade show without a lot of trade activity. And with their decision to do fewer but bigger games over long periods of time, they will go to a point where June 2019 was not a time for them to have new things to say. In other words, they're really not preparing any sorts of major announcements this year. So this meme is actually somewhat closer to reality. But still though, he has a point. Considering that the internet is live 24/7, you can basically create announcements on the internet itself and it will spread like wildfire, especially if you're a big company like Sony. Or don't even announce anything, just drop your game there completely out of nowhere and people would come into droves playing it because it's free to play, it's battle royale, it's actually good, and it's from a franchise that people love. Let's not forget that significant factor. But for real though, while Sony doesn't really have any new games to announce, at least as far as we know, they do have a point in how journalists are losing relevance. Since they pretty much have their own audience at this point, they can just host their own events and have full control about what they're doing instead of being restricted to E3's rules. The internet makes it easier for them to interact with the consumers, and you know what? They might have a point. The internet makes it easier to cut off the middleman, the journalists, and tells the consumers exactly what they wanted to hear. But there is also another news on Sony that I want to talk about. Sony's president John Kodera, who oversaw PS4 censorship policies, gets replaced with Jim Ryan. I've talked about Sony's censorship on the PS4, you can consult my video on that, link down below. It seems to me that the reason why Japanese game developers have to contact Sony in California to release their Japanese games is because Sony's former president John Kodera restructured Sony Interactive Entertainment so that the Japanese division would answer directly to the California offices, creating one really inconvenient string of events filled with time zone restrictions, language barriers, and mass censorship of anime games. And now he will be replaced with Jim Ryan, someone who thinks that crossplay is harmful to children. He's also the same guy who said that we don't really need backwards compatibility on the PS4. Thank you, Jim. Thank you for making me avoid games like Red Dead Redemption, Tales of Xillia 1 and 2, Persona 4 Arena games, Metal Gear Solid 4. Somehow you're making Xbox One to look like a very attractive console, Sony. But hey, at least we have PlayStation now! I don't even know what's going on with you, Sony. You're censoring anime games, making the PS4 sound less and less relevant as time goes by, and you're making fewer games. Bigger games, but fewer games. You guys might not realize how the console exclusives dominate the last year's lineup of games. God of War, Spider-Man, Red Dead Redemption 2, Monster Hunter World, for a brief moment before it gets to the PC. Even Detroit Become Human is selling pretty well. The PS4 and the console market in general had a good time last year. I think that 2018 is the best year for the PS4, the only best year for the PS4, and the last best year for the PS4. The PS5 is coming, and the PS Now allows you to stream games from the cloud if you pay them extra cash, but it can't do that. The PS5 should better be good. In the console market, the PS4 wins in the exclusives and nothing else. Okay, it has a really versatile and customizable controller that I use as my daily driver, but aside from those two things, the PlayStation 4 is just a typical game console that doesn't really have any other interesting features and can still be beaten by my laptop. most of the time at least. I'm honestly still wondering what the right direction for the console market should be so that it can compete with the PC. At least the Switch has the portability. How can the next lineup of consoles compete in the gaming industry? We will see the Western gaming industry turn into the Asian gaming industry, where it's dominated by nothing but PC and mobile because they're convenient and everyone has them. I don't know, but I would like to know your thoughts on this matter too. Before we end this video, you can support me through PayPal, Patreon, Subscribestar, or Ko-fi, links down below. Also, huge thanks to Vivian, Dark Alley Rambler, and John Blaine for the pledges. You guys are fantastic.